Hello and welcome to Building the Premier Accounting Firm. I'm your host, Roger Knecht, president of Universal Accounting Center. And for nearly 3 decades now, I've been working with accounting professionals to help them start and build successful accounting businesses. This is offering quality accounting services and, most importantly, doing so profitably. It's here that we discuss with the experts a variety of things ranging from topics that include marketing, selling, pricing, talking about tech stacks, managing your employees, training your employees, retaining customers, onboarding customers, mental health, and so many more things. It's here that we dive into those things that you need to consider as you're running your business so that you can honestly say to yourself, you are working on your company. With that being done, we're actually going to have today an excellent guest. It's someone I've been looking forward to speaking with for some time. It's Nathan Whittacre. He is the CEO of Stimulus Technologies. Nathan actually is a visionary leader who has spent 3 decades of his career at the forefront of technological innovations and entrepreneurship. He is a trusted advisor, mentor, and thought leader in the technological field. He actually is the author of CEO's Digital Survival Guide, a practical handbook to navigating the future. He's actually, with Stimulus Technologies, focused on providing the best technological solutions for businesses, including IT services, internet, and VoIP. Nathan's passions lie in helping people better their lives through technology, cybersecurity, and intentional culture. So, Nathan, welcome to the show.
It's my pleasure to be here, Roger.
Yeah, this is going to be a great discussion because we're all faced with technological issues. We're having technological issues on a daily basis, I'm assuming. So one of the things that I want to do is kind of give a little bit of background first before we dive in. What got you into this technological space to where you were working with businesses and helping them with these challenges they're facing?
Well, I've always been interested in technology and to computers since I was a young child. And we actually started Stimulus Technologies when I was 17 years old. It was my brother, my dad,
Wow.
and I started the company,
Uh-huh.
my brother's garage. It helped put us through college. And, we realized that there was a need for small businesses as they were implementing technology to, improve automation, improve their work that they were doing, that we could be a benefit to that. So we focus on small to mid-sized businesses. One of our first customers was a CPA, and we helped him put together his practice. And been working with CPAs, for over 25 years now, and all the changes that have happened since the late '90s when we started with technology.
Well, I love that because clearly so many stories begin with it started in the garage. And so you can attest to that as well. It put you through college starting at 17. It's a family business. I mean, there's a lot of things we can dive into here, but from a technological point of view, I just want to understand technologies have changed since the 90s. You've seen an evolution. How would you describe, let's say, the decades of the 90s versus the technologies that existed in the early 2000s and what we're experiencing today?
I think, companies in the '90s, they were just getting started on using computers, moving to Windows versus DOS. When we started, we were running DOS 6.2 and Windows 3.1, if you guys
Yep.
can remember back that
Oh, yeah.
far. And companies, decided to implement Quicken or QuickBooks to do some of their accounting procedures. Ironically, our first books were done on ledger papers. My dad, ran businesses in the '80s and said that's what we needed to do. And we said, Dad, wait, we need to do something a little different here. And uh, our client, that was our CPA, also, helped us set up QuickBooks, and a lot of our clients were using that. So that transition first was just using computers,
Yes.
moving away from paper to computers. And then, the late '90s, businesses wanted to get online, get their website set up, email access, email communications. And, we think today that we never not had that technology, that instant
Yeah.
communication. But really, that just getting email access was a big deal back in the '90s, in the late '90s. And then the 2000s, along with that came, integration of local area networks, sharing data in between people on the networks. From an accounting standpoint, I remember helping accountants get the data from their clients much easier, and securely. And so that's that more rapid communication and accessibility really moved us through the early 2000s. And then I think what we've been really trying to do in the last 15 years is two things. One is protect the data as the threats have increased dramatically.
Yes.
Protecting confidential information, proprietary information, especially financial data, has become critical, especially as governments have put in regulations to safeguard c- that important financial data and personal data. And then automation, improving processes, doing more with less people. I think all industries are suffering from, not enough people, not enough trained people. And so figuring out ways to better automate. And I think that's the goal of, or the dream of AI today is how can we quickly automate our work and do more with less and produce more with less staff. So that's kind of the evolution I've seen over 30 years. And it's been a wild ride for that amount of time.
What you shared there is, I think, so important to actually set the stage for what we're about to discuss, because all of those changes at the time were quite significant. And honestly, I do feel that they were revolutionary. And we might not have seen that at the time, but looking back, I mean, they're such an integral part of our lives. We all have email addresses. We all have computers. I mean, these are definitely how we're doing business today. And I do remember going down to, whether it be Best Buy or Costco, grabbing that box of the next Windows version or a QuickBooks version or whatever to install it on the computer. Now we've transitioned to all these things being out in the cloud. So there's an evolution that you're alluding to. So what is it that, as a business owner today, running an accounting firm, should I be aware of as I'm looking at new technology and evaluating whether or not it's something I should incorporate, learn, and actually spend time and money investing in?
I think that's a great question because, in those transition periods, a lot of people do question the investment in new technologies. And especially if you've been doing the same thing for many years, we often get pushback of why does you just mentioned, going down and getting a new copy of QuickBooks or Windows.
Yeah.
Why doesn't Windows 7 still work, or Windows 95? Why can't I just use Windows 10 still? And why do these software companies constantly push out updates? And I think that, the changes are incremental in the moment, but if you look at them through the lens of 10 years, or especially if you step back, several decades, you see that change happens dramatically. There's no way you'd want to go back and, use Windows 3.1 again. It would be so clunky and old, and what we did, 30 years ago wouldn't make sense today. And so business owners need to embrace that change, because if you look at any of the charts of, how change happens with technology, it just is exponentially accelerating. And as we embrace more automation, kind of thinking in the future, automation with artificial intelligence integrated with it, that change that we're living through right now might seem a little slow at the moment. You're trying and experimenting a few things, but in 10 years, we're going to look back and say, wow, that was a dramatic change to the way that we did business. And I didn't see it then, but I could never go back to the way we
Yes.
did it in 2025. The way that we do it in 2035 is so much better. But got to embrace that change and work through all the complications that come through those changes.
You are so right. And just to illustrate that, the changes, when you look back, you're like, I'd never go back to that. I can't remember the last time I used whiteout on a piece of paper. I can't remember the last time I took one of those whiteout mechanisms where I had the tape and I ran it across the word to white it out to retype it. I can't remember the last time I had carbon paper and I was dealing with carbon print. I mean, these things are so antiquated. I would imagine many of the people I'm even speaking to right now don't even know what I'm referring to, but yet those things are antiquated to the point that they're no longer in existence. I don't have whiteout in my office. And so that's just an illustration of how things have evolved.
Get your copy of Red to Black. It is the book written for accounting professionals to help businesses turn around and go from being in the red to being in the black. This book is written for consultants, business owners, operators, and managers, no matter what your client's product or service, or irrespective of your talent, skill, or expertise. As an accounting professional, you'll be able to use the principles presented in this book to actually become, for your clients, the profit and growth expert. Every chapter is filled with principles and concepts that you can use immediately with your clients to lead them from being in the red to being more profitable in their business, and see you as, in fact, their guide, their coach, with the expertise and wisdom that you can bring from this book. In the book, you have how-to guide explanations, you have models that you can follow, you're shown how to actually calculate and determine the fees for your services, the actual model that you'll use during the implementation of all this, and most importantly, the end-all results with your clients. Get this book now and see what it is you can do to offer this new revenue-producing service as, in fact, the profit and growth expert. For more information on how you can take advantage of this offer, go to the episode description and there get the information you need to take advantage of this today.
So you mentioned something that I also think is relevant here, and it's really data security. It's that communication of safe information, secure information, confidential information that originally used to come in hard copy. You'd have the client deliver various papers. Now that's being sent digitally. We want to make sure it's secure. We want to make sure we're securing the data in a way that we're confident it's not going to be compromised. What would you have to say about data security and data breaches?
I think, the regulations often are long delayed from when incidents happen. So, I think, I live in the state of Nevada, and Nevada was one of the first states that rolled out a data security rule from a state level. And they made the regulation that any confidential or personally identifiable information can't be transmitted unencrypted via electronic communication. So email, you can't upload it to an unsecured website, things like that. And this was back in the early 2000s that they came out with this rule. And we thought it was funny because you could fax things still. Fax was considered a secure communication. So there's another technology that probably people have heard of, but we certainly don't use as much or use it all today. But the question is what led the state of Nevada to implement that compliance requirement? And it was because hackers had figured out how to get into email boxes to download tax returns, bank account information, any personally identifiable information that they can use to hack bank accounts, credit card numbers, things like that. And that's, even though that regulation's been around for well over 15 years, and there's been a plethora of new regulations that have come out, those things still happen because the hackers are going to figure out ways to get around that. It was, okay, well, we'll fax it. Well, nobody uses fax anymore, so we got to figure out a different way. And it's hard to convince clients to use portals or send a secure email through a portal. It's frustrating for them, and so people still make mistakes, and hackers know that. And then worse than that is as you mentioned, we use the cloud now, and so the hackers are working to get into cloud accounts and cloud access, and so we've had to implement a lot of things to prevent major issues in cloud data storage. And so, companies are fighting this, especially small businesses are fighting against this every day, thinking one, they're too small to be an object of a hack. But two, they feel burdened by the cost of these regulations. Putting together a security plan and implementing security mechanisms is expensive for a small firm that's just trying to get started. So that it's battling this, okay, I know I need to do something. I know I need to protect my client data, but it is expensive to do. And how do I balance, the ease of doing business with me with all these regulatory requirements? And so it's a difficult environment to live in, especially for a small organization.
Oh, yeah. Well, depending on our relationships with our clients, our reputations matter, how they feel comfortable and confident in our ability to not only do our jobs, but do it in a safe, secure environment that doesn't compromise our clients, them. So what you're bringing up here, I think, is very relevant, because the last thing we want to do is notify our clients that we've been hacked, that we've had our information compromised, that their information is vulnerable. That's just something we don't want to do. And yet we do have all of that confidential information in our possession. And so that's one of the things that I think is very important to understand. But this brings to, at least in my mind, this next question of, you've got these new technologies, you've got this data security that we're talking about here. There's all these things that we're considering as we're running our business that are all technological in nature. How do you evaluate as a business owner what to implement, what to do, and what to use? And I'm going to offer something that I've used as a litmus test to actually assess this. And I'm curious what you would add to it. For me, the first question that I want to ask is it something I'm already dealing with today and using that I need to improve, enhance, that would simplify it perhaps, make it more secure? Or is it something that's a shiny new object, something that I'm considering offering, something that would be nice to add on, but I haven't yet implemented it? That's the first thing. Is it something I'm already doing or something new? Second question is whether it's going to impact my clients. It's forward facing, something that's going to involve their participation, that they're going to have to actually be trained in and use. Or is it purely internal? Is it something that I'm going to be able to do internally that affects my efficiency, my production, but it's my staff that has to be trained? It's internally that my clients wouldn't know about or experience, but it is to their benefit. Those are the two questions that I usually ask myself to assess whether or not what I'm entertaining or looking at is worth pursuing and paying for. Is there anything else you would add as we're looking at technologies and even this data security that we're discussing?
I really like that. I think, you have to have a strategic vision for what you
Mm-hmm.
want to do with technology in your business and overall in your company. And then making sure that whatever technology you're putting in place aligns with that strategic vision. I think your first point, I've seen that over and over again, is, a business owner goes to a trade show or talks to one of their, friends. They hear about this technology and say, we have to have that. That is the greatest thing since sliced bread. And then the question comes back is how is it going to improve internal processes or improve the customer experience? And
Yes.
if it doesn't do either of those immediately, then it doesn't have the impact you're looking for on your business. You don't want to implement the shiny new object, as you said, that will get put on the shelf in a year because nobody really wants to use it. I've just finished reading a book called Fans First by Jesse Cole.
Okay.
One of his points in there was really interesting. He runs a baseball team, the Savannah Bananas, and
Oh, yeah.
it's entertaining book. But
Yep.
one thing that caught my eye in there is he talks about eliminating friction. And I really like that phrase because, I think a lot of times, especially when we're talking about security, but any new technologies can increase friction, especially when dealing with clients. And think about that as you're implementing new technologies: is can it eliminate friction and improve the customer experience when implemented? So if there's anything you can do inside your company that eliminates friction, that actually will enhance the customer experience, enhance you as a business. And it should be internally too. If you can eliminate friction internally and reduce the time to complete a process because you can do it faster or different ways among different people inside your organization, that's definitely a technology to implement. I would say the third thing I would add to there is to your list is making sure that you're compliant with the regulation. If it's something that you have to do because of compliance requirements, then you need to that's a priority for an organization. And so there's many things that we have to do today that we might not have had to do 20 years ago because of compliance requirements, whether it's regulatory from the government or potentially just getting insurance today. Getting us employee theft or cybercrime insurance is much more difficult today than it was even 3 or 4 years ago. These insurance companies are losing a lot of money on claims, and they're really scrutinizing organizations, such as CPA firms that have, high amount of personal identifiable information and are targets of hackers. And so the ability and the cost of getting insurance has gone up considerably. And so anything in that regulatory environment is essential to implement.
Yeah, no, your advice about friction, I am familiar with the team and the book. So I liked how you brought that up because that is something to consider. And then compliance, you are so right. Once we learn that there are certain regulations that we need to be adhering to, we need to actually quickly figure out what it is we can do to be compliant. And so any of those things that come to our attention, we need to take seriously and actually do what we can to meet whatever objective that was decided. Whether we agree or not, it's basically irrelevant. It's now the regulation, and we have to step to the plate and actually take care of it.
Get your free copy of the book In the Black, 9 Principles to Make Your Business Profitable. This is a how-to guide for accounting professionals to work with their clients and actually implement proven processes and systems to ensure that their clients make profit a priority. It is in this book you'll actually learn how to map the business and, in fact, make marketing, accounting, and production a priority within your client's business. You also learn the wisdom pyramid, how to actually take the information you're providing to your clients and effectively use it so that they can make more informed business decisions. This book is designed to help you communicate more effectively with your clients and, in fact, have them see you as their profit and growth expert. Get your free copy now of the ebook today, In the Black, 9 Principles to Make Your Business Profitable.
So you earlier brought up AI. It's a topic that everyone wants to bring up, especially when discussing technology. AI is very, very relevant. Artificial intelligence is now already impacting many of our lives. It's not this theoretical, it's now a practical thing. So I want to bring this down to a very fundamental thing for the CEOs, those running businesses, those of us who have our companies. What are some common misconceptions that we might be considering or being exposed to as it relates to AI that we could consider noise and maybe eliminate from our minds?
Well, you hear about in the news articles, AI is coming after my job. My job will be eliminated by AI, right? And that's something, your employees are probably worried about it. That would, I mean, because they think that, suddenly the owner's going to implement this AI system that's going to take their job. And maybe, that's a strong maybe actually in the next, if we think about the next 10 years, not today, but maybe in the future. There are industries that are dramatically impacted by AI, I think more than others. And ironically, what I went to school for is software development, computer science. And our industry is dramatically affected. There's been a lot of layoffs, a lot of automation that's occurred with AI. And, computer scientists have kind of written themselves out of, programming jobs, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I think it is coming, for all industries. But the computer came for all industries. I think about 50 years ago. If you wanted to design a building and you were an engineering firm, you would have had plans and a slide rule and paper and rulers. Now it's all done with a lot of automation with CAD and think about preparing a tax return. If you had to do it by hand today, how onerous that would be. The automation that's occurred with a lot of the software. And I think what the reality is today is your software vendors that you're buying from are incorporating better automation and better technologies inside their accounting software and inside auditing software, inside tax preparing software, all that. And it's just going to make your job easier and faster. And so the goal is to do more work with less errors, with less people. And and we've seen that over time with the evolution of technology, and that's really what's happening. So no, there's not going to be an AI bot that's going to take over and sit in your office and communicate with your clients. People want a personal touch still. They want, that relationship with their professionals that they have. But it requires, I think, all of us in all industries to be better experts at what we do and better communicators and better interfaces from a human standpoint, and then let automation do what it does best. And that's, enhance the work that we're doing. So I guess, throwing that back to you, as you're talking to CPA firms, what are their concerns? Are those along the similar lines, or are you finding the same or something different that they're worried about or wanting out of it?
Yeah, very, very similar. In fact, I just had this conversation yesterday. So being fresh on my mind, I will definitely say that what you've just described and said is, I believe, spot right on. It's one of the things that I think concerns people. They're questioning, how's this going to impact me? What's the future years going to look like? Year 10 versus year, say, 2 years from now. But the point that I'd like to emphasize is what you mentioned. It's better to see this as a tool, something that we're able to actually leverage to our benefit, to do our jobs more efficiently, allowing us to work with more clients and go deeper with those clients that we're already servicing, becoming more efficient to enable us to actually improve our profit margins, only because we're now doing work more quickly. So all of a sudden, what's happening is this tool becomes just as important to us as our computer is, as our smartphone is, as our car is. If we didn't have these technologies, we couldn't travel as far, go as quickly, we wouldn't be able to do as much. And so all of a sudden, we start to realize the car didn't replace me. It didn't replace, the computer didn't replace me. It helped me do my work better. Now, is the horse complaining about the invention of the car? Maybe, maybe not. It's enjoying itself in the pasture right now. So I think there's a lot of things here that we can consider. But the point is like you mentioned, it's the integration of the AI into the platforms we're already utilizing that we need to take advantage of. We need to learn those and leverage those to our advantage, because we're already paying for the tool. That platform is something we're already familiar with. Now let's see, with the integration of the AI, how we can better utilize it. So at the end of the day, I think the misconception is that a year from now, our jobs will be different. I don't think so. But I do believe it's correct to say that 3 years, 5 years, 10 years from now, our jobs will be different. Our interactions with our clients will be different. How we do our jobs will be different. But think of it going back 10 years ago. 10 years ago, we perhaps were discussing whether or not to go on the cloud. Do we continue to actually put the software on our computer and have all of our clients on our hard drive, or do we actually put it up on a server somewhere? That was a conversation. Do we trust it? I can imagine that a lot of people may recall when the internet was coming out and people were doing online transactions, how reticent we were to actually put our credit cards on an account and have it readily available to where we would do a transaction online. Now my credit card's out there in the ether. Well, today, I'm sure most of us actually have our credit cards on file and do click to buy on Amazon with no need to actually put in our payment information. It's there. It's just a button and then it's on its way. So I think we've adapted and become comfortable with the technologies, and the same will be true for AI. So anything more you'd add on that?
I think your point of the existing platforms, one thing I would say is, there are some software vendors that are embracing AI more than others. And one of the things we like to do, as painful as it is, just do a review of the software packages that we have at least annually, and see if they're keeping up with industry standards. What we find is a lot of times, a software company is purchased by a private equity firm, merges with another, and maybe our software package that we've been using for 10, 20 years is no longer really being developed or invested in. And so it's a good opportunity right now, especially as the industry is changing, is look at up and coming firms, look at other software packages that may be evolutionary or revolutionary in their technology. So it's always a good opportunity just to do a quick review, quick gut check on the different software packages you're using, and making sure that you're seeing updates coming, you're seeing their development timelines, that they're going to be incorporating these technologies. Because us as small business owners, we don't have the capital or time to go and write our own AI system to do tax preparation. That's not going to happen for most businesses. What we got to rely on is our software vendors to be the forefront for this new automation, new technology. And just some aren't there. And even in our industry and technology, we're constantly looking at our vendors that we work with and make sometimes major shifts because we see that a software package stagnates and is not being invested in. So take that time, look at what's out there, and there may be an up and coming firm that you hadn't heard about 5 years ago that might be the latest and greatest and best choice today, or maybe in a couple of years. So always do that analysis and see what makes the most sense for your organization.
I love it. Yeah, you're spot on as it relates to the technologies leveraging the different, AIs and so forth. It could be that you have a platform that's very stagnant in its development and it's not evolved, it's not had updates, it's not actually evolving. And if that's the case, it's a telltale sign that maybe there's a competitor out there that's a little bit more aggressive in that same application. And so I would agree that assessment on an annual basis of whether or not you're still liking the technology is a very good one to consider, especially now with how things are evolving. So well said on that front. Now, I do want to take this from an optimistic point of view and a practical point of view and just ask just directly, are there any big challenges or digital threats in business that we ought to be considering right now as well? Anything on the horizon that you're thinking of?
Well, what we see is from a negative standpoint is cybersecurity is still a big risk, and I think it is enhanced with AI on two fronts. Companies using AI irresponsibly internally. Things like we saw when ChatGPT came out, people were uploading confidential information, and then as the training data came out, suddenly somebody's profit and loss statement was available to the public world, that you could get that because they uploaded it and it was trained in the model. So, people are using new technologies irresponsibly. And so that's kind of one of the negative sides of AI is just, your data could potentially be exposed if you don't have a good AI policy internally and you're using unsecure AI systems. And I think that goes across the board, not just AI systems, but all software packages. I think worse is hackers are using AI to attack organizations at a much higher rate, and they're getting more sophisticated on their type of attacks. And they're willing to go to smaller organizations or even individuals to conduct these attacks. I thought it was interesting. I look at the FBI statistics every year and seeing financial fraud and especially cryptocurrency fraud being one of the largest categories, and we see ransomware, which used to be one of the largest categories, now in the not even in the top 10 of the
Really?
organizations. Yeah, it's interesting how it's changed. And what these hackers are coming after is identities. They want identities of individuals and organizations, and that they can leverage that identity information to perpetrate further attacks, against other individuals, maybe high net worth individuals, and conduct financial fraud. That's one of the highest categories. You know, and how do they get that? They get in, as we've talked about a couple of times, cloud systems. They bypass multi-factor authentication. They convince people to click on links that they shouldn't. Stuff that has been around for a long time. We're still doing it inside an organization, and then they sit in that cloud system for a long time and analyze how we're communicating with our clients, who we're communicating with, and then they find that maybe that bank account that's held by a high net worth individual, and then attack that person. And so, especially, we're dealing with financial data. AI allows them, faster access because they're craftier on their emails, craftier on their communication, and then they can target much broader swaths of individuals because AI can do faster research for them. So that's the kind of stuff that we're seeing, and it's scary because the attacks have increased dramatically. We're having to implement more and more systems every year to prevent these type of attacks from happening.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's that thing that can keep us up at night. Those, where am I vulnerable? What's happening? And honestly, it can become very not only scary but debilitating. So I'm glad we're just addressing it. But do you have any suggestions? You spoke of two-factor authentication. Are there any other suggestions you have to perhaps help mitigate this?
Yeah, I think thinking along the attacks that have been successful against people I know and organizations, the attacks are often against employees. And so it's really important that we're providing good employee training and also monitoring of what our employees are doing. You're not monitoring every click, but you're making sure that they're, doing the training, that they are, completing, annual assessments, which are required by regulations, but also, I like little weekly micro trainings to keep it top of mind. But also doing what we call phishing simulations, where you send out test emails to your organization to see who's clicking on those emails that lead you to the bad website. So that's the employee training is really essential. Multi-factor authentication from a security standpoint is still one of the most important things, but hackers have figured out ways to get around multi-factor authentication, unfortunately.
Hmm.
And not to get too technical, but there's a way to take that login token, and hackers are able to use that and like replay that to get into people's accounts. And so what we have to do is have full-time and real-time monitoring of essential cloud accounts, especially things like Microsoft 365, with software what we call MDRs, or managed detect and response systems, that are constantly looking for anomalies in those logins. So, you got to train your employees. It only gets you so far because people still make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to have a lot of monitoring on the back end to ensure that, those type of attacks can happen. I would say we're seeing 2 to 3 times a week of our clients. We have, several hundred clients we manage, and we're seeing 2 or 3 individual attacks per week against people. They click on the wrong email, they somehow, get access into the system. And luckily, our software catches it, and we get an alert, and we go and mitigate it. But it's several times a week. If we didn't have these systems in place, I'll just share a quick story. We had this was probably 10 plus years ago, before a lot of this technology came in place. And this is one of the reasons why we've really doubled down on these things. We had a client firm that handled financial transactions for their clients, and pseudo CPA firm, but more financial management.
Okay.
And so one of their employees, who did a lot of wire transactions for their clients, got an email one day, clicked on the wrong link. Nothing really happened, but the hacker got into their email system. The hacker for 6 months monitored the communication and saw how their clients communicated with this person, and then at one point realized that there was this one client was moving hundreds of thousands of dollars funds between accounts. They set up an impersonation of this client and impersonated the client, and forged a request for over $600,000 to be wired to an international account. This was a standard request. It was formatted exactly the way that all other requests were formatted. The individual executed the wire. And as you know, with wires, it's almost immediate. There was no way to get the money back. It went to Peru. They had somebody waiting at the bank in Peru to withdraw those funds, and they were cashed the same day as the wire. There was still a little bit money left in the account once they discovered it, which was the next day that this happened. They were able to recover a couple of $100,000, but majority of it was lost. And because it was cash, there was no way to trace what happened with it.
Yeah.
It happens so fast. It happens so slow and then fast. And
Yeah.
So we just there was a wake up call for us as an organization and for our clients that we have to take these things seriously, because hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of dollars are at stake, and hackers are willing and waiting for mistakes to happen. And so we have to be right 100% of the time, which we can't. And that's why we have insurance to cover those 0.1% where we can't fix the problem. But we have to be so diligent, because that individual, even though high net worth, that was still a lot of money for them, and that firm that cost them a lot of pain and agony, and an insurance payout to cover the expenses. So it was a lesson learned. I think if you ask any technology company, they'd have a similar story of something that happened. And it's just, we have to be very diligent, because we're responsible for our clients and our clients' security, and we have to do what's right for them.
Yeah. Well, it's a horrible story, and unfortunately one I've heard many a time. So it's not something uncommon. So thank you for sharing it. But at the same time, hopefully it's a wake up call for the rest of us to actually consider where are some of those vulnerabilities and what can we do to address them. So thank you for that.
Learn the turnkey process for starting and building a successful accounting business. It's in this course, so you'll actually experience 4 specific trainings. Part 1, your business plan, everything you need to know to get started. Part 2, how to price your services, the pros and cons of different methods and the best way to price your services that are both profitable and professional. Marketing and selling your services so that you can actually be top of mind, but more importantly, how to actually be seen as a trusted strategic advisor. And last of all, mapping it all out. 5 principles in running a profitable business so that you can be both competent and confident in the services you're providing. Learn now what it is you can be doing to start and build your own successful accounting, bookkeeping, or tax business. Go to the episode description and there get the information you need to take advantage of this today.
I do want to end with a question regarding your business. You indicated at the beginning that you had obviously started the company with your father and brother. I'm just curious, from a family business point of view, any advice for other individuals who work with family members as to maybe how to differentiate between personal and professional and so forth? Do you have any rules that you've established or seen effective for your family?
Well, I would say that it's actually funny. We've eventually bought each other out of our respective companies. So my brother,
Okay.
in the early part of the business, we had a software development division. He actually separated that off because that was exploding in a different direction. And he went to run that. And then about 15 years later, we bought each other out of our respective businesses. And, I think having that line, whether it's, separating out roles or separating out, literally separating the businesses, I think, that separation of who's in charge of what and how we, manage the company is an essential thing that I had to learn. And it was helpful. And, there's, it's hard to separate, family dinners. You often discuss business. I mean, that's the way it is. And it's okay. Everybody has to be okay with that or maybe set limits on the discussions of it. My brother and I still have, some business interactions and in kind of a nonprofit that we both associate with. My dad's since well retired, but I think what really helped us when we were in the operations of it is, having those boundaries, who's responsible for what, and making sure that we're all in alignment of where we're going in the company and not bleeding too much past the business into our family life that we have. So not the easiest thing for sure. And I respect anybody that's in a family business because it is one of the hardest things to do and one of the most fulfilling too. We love,
Yes.
The story that we've, grown this as a family business and we, cheer each other on in all our individual endeavors and family endeavors too.
Yeah, no, well said. And I appreciate that insight. That's good advice. So thank you. I'm going to wrap this up. And there's a few things that I want to kind of draw attention to. So I'm going to come back to you for a closing thought. But real quickly, I do want to mention to my listeners that there's a book that Nathan has written. It is a book called The CEO's Digital Survival Guide. And he's offering that to be available for you to take advantage of. So go to the episode description and get information as to where you can find that on his website. In addition, he's also invited us to connect with him via LinkedIn. So in doing so, you can actually get that connection. And from there, obviously, direct message him and perhaps ask a few questions that you may want to take advantage of. So definitely get a copy of his book and reach out to him. In addition, I want to invite you to take advantage of the Accountrepreneurs Challenge. This is something that is an opportunity that you don't want to miss. It's a 90-day challenge for you to work on both your personal and professional kind of perspectives as it relates to running your business. So we're going to be talking about things in the challenge that definitely range from time management to vision building to working on the company, just a variety of things that you can easily implement on a weekly basis. Some of these activities are as few as 5, 10, 15 minutes, maybe 1 week will be an hour. But the point is it's a challenge that you can embrace and over the next 90 days, actually focus on both yourself and your business. So I encourage you to sign up now for the Accountrepreneurs Challenge. In addition to that, you can also also take advantage of joining us for GrowCon. GrowCon is an annual conference. It's for owners of bookkeeping, accounting, and tax businesses. It's an event you do not want to miss, where we actually hear from the experts and, more importantly, get to interact with our peers. So I want you to register and join us for GrowCon. Both the GrowCon information and the Accountrepreneurs information is found at universalaccounting.com. You can go there in the navigation, check out the free resources for the Accountrepreneurs Challenge, and in the GrowCon link, actually find the information regarding the event, and I invite you to do so. Now, as a recap or a summary of what we were discussing, I love the fact that we were able to start with Nathan's background and really talk about the evolution of technology as it was over these last number of decades, and how, as significant as those things were at the time, they were perhaps just these minor inconveniences that we had to learn and train ourselves on. But looking back, we wouldn't do without them. And so I thought that was a nice way of actually setting the stage for our conversation about AI and how to actually utilize it. We had a conversation about data breaches and really the securities we need to have with our clients' information and so forth. And I thought that was a very important part of the conversation, because it really does bring a serious note to what it is that we're actually dealing with as we interact with our clients and host and work with their information. We had a great conversation then regarding friction and how we need to, in assessing the softwares and the programs that we're considering, see whether or not it's impacting our clients or our own business, and where that friction might exist, and determine whether or not it is an effective way of doing work. Well, we went through some questions to assess whether or not those shiny objects are ones that we ought to entertain. And I volunteered some questions that we should consider. And Nathan as well gave some insights. And I think ultimately, at the end of the day, it comes down to regulations, whether or not we're being compliant. And I thought that was a good way of kind of summing that part up of, even if you don't feel you need it, if it's something now required as part of our profession, it's definitely something that we need to be obliged to. Now, with all that being said, I thought that the insights that were also shared as it related to AI and leveraging the various things we're already using today that have integrated AI was great advice. And I think that's something that we all need to be considering. So wonderful little takeaways from our conversation today. And lastly, he obviously shared his thoughts as it related to family-run businesses. So wonderful takeaways, great bits of information. Nathan, what more would you like to add to the end of the conclusion or the topic today?
I think probably the primary thing I would say, if you're thinking about technology in general, is just have fun in experimenting. And, the technology is advancing so fast, but as we embrace it, enjoy, the life and opportunities that it gives us to integrate with each other, to interact, and, just have fun with technology too, whether it's in business or, your personal lives. There's a lot of opportunity to, use technology to improve our lives and to improve our companies. So that's what I try to do with technology in general. Even though I'm in the technology field, I still love technology and love what it can do for us, and know the limits of it too, and turn it off every once in a while to enjoy life without it. So it's an important part of it too.
I love it. And it was a great summary. I think really important to realize that we also should be turning it off at times. That was really good. All right. So with all that being said, I really want to thank Nathan for being on the show today. And more importantly, you're listening. And so if you haven't already subscribe to the podcast, set your notifications. We release a new episode each and every week. It's here that you're going to get the information from the experts as it relates to running your business and, in fact, building the premier accounting firm in your area. In addition to that, I do want to invite you to check out our free resources at universalaccounting.com. There are a number of free resources ranging from courses and books and so forth that you can leverage and take advantage of as it relates to your business, as well as working with your clients. In addition, I want to invite you to check out the highlights that we have of the podcast. We happen to have playlists that we've compiled of over 300 different episodes that we've had. These are these playlists that topically address things you may be dealing with today, things that are relevant to you now. So go there to the episode or the podcast section and find the playlist in the highlight section, where you can dive into topics ranging from marketing, selling, tech stacks, just a variety of expert topics that you can actually go deep into, hearing what the experts are having to say about each of those. So I invite you to check out the playlist. Lastly, as it relates to the programs that Universal Accounting Center offers, if you're interested in offering quality accounting services, training your staff, enhancing what it is you're providing, improving the value of the services that you're offering, definitely become a professional bookkeeper, professional tax preparer, a QuickBooks specialist, a profit and growth expert, and so many more. In that, you can go to universalaccountingschool.com and find out the various courses and programs that are offered by Universal Accounting. So for more information about that, feel free to also give us a phone call. You can reach us at 801-265-3777. And always remember this, if it's about accounting, it is Universal. Take care and have a great day and be safe out there.